Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Brandy, and this is Paradise Bags by Brandy. Today we're learning how to make the triplet pouch or triplet clutch from Inaliti Design. It's a cute little bag. It's got 3 little pouches that are attached to it. Comes together very quick. You have the option of either doing piping or no piping. You can choose to do side connectors or D-ring. And then you can also choose to either do a turn lock or you can do a magnetic snap the way I did. I also made the decision at the end not to sew my sections together and leave them open so that I not only end up with my 3 pouches, but then I also end up with smaller pockets in between those. And then it also has a slip pocket on the back. You can decide to do edge coating or leave your vinyl raw. I did do a little bit of edge coating on this one just to give it a little bit more of a refined look for the inside as well. This is a drop-in lining pattern, so you don't have to worry about birthing it, other than a small amount of birthing that you do for the exterior part of the bag. But it's super easy and it doesn't take too much to do that. Minimal effort. What I love about this bag more than anything is the different options that you have for it. Hopefully you'll enjoy sewing this with me. Let's get started. Alright guys, so we are ready to get sewing. You should have piece A, and you should have 6 of these, piece A. You should also have these marked with for your piping, and for 2 of your piece C pieces, you should also have the center marked on all of those. So you should have 2 C's, a B, 2 B's, and an A, and on your A you should have it marked for either your turn lock or your magnetic snap. You should also have piece B, and you should have 1 of those. Piece C, 1 interior. Piece D, you should have 1 interior and 1 exterior. Piece E, you should have 6 exterior, and these should already have the double-sided sticky tape on the bottom. Piece F, you should have 6 linings, and these should also be prepped, already folded down by 3/8 of an inch. And then piece G, and you should have 2 exterior pieces. If you're doing a magnetic snap rather than a turn lock, your magnetic snap needs to be installed before you put your 2 piece G's together, before you sew them. And then lastly, 2 piece H for the card slots, and these can be done in vinyl. So the first thing that we need to do is pull out our piece H and 2 of our piece F. And per the instructions, we're going to attach our card slots to piece F centered, and we're going to sew around the outside and then up the center on two of your interior pieces. Okay, so we should now have 2 piece F panels with the card slots attached to either one, or attached to both of them. So now we want to pull out the rest of our piece F and our piece E. And again, piece E should have a piece of double-sided sticky tape to the bottom of each one of these. So go ahead and grab 1 of your piece F pieces and 1 of your piece E pieces. Turn your piece F over to the back side. Pull that backing from your double-sided sticky tape. And we're going to line up piece E with piece F along this folded edge and centered. So let me do that. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so it should look just like that, to where our piece E is attached to piece F along that folded edge. And this is what it looks like from the front. And then we're going to top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so just like this. So go ahead and do this to all of your 6 interior pieces and piece E pieces, and we'll be back. Okay, so we should now have 6 of our interior pieces, piece F, sewn to piece E, and we should have 2 that have card slots on them. So now we're going to pair these up. I like to put my 2 card slots together, but you can put the card slots with a plain one or just plain ones together. So I always put my card slots together just because it makes it easier, and then just pair up my other 2 by themselves. If you opted to do a zipper pocket on one of these, you may want to put your zipper pocket with a plain side instead. So once we have these paired up, we're going to clip them in place, and then we're going to sew the outside 3 sides and the bottom at a 3/8 inch seam allowance on all 3. Okay, so you should now have all 3 of your lining pieces sewn at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. So now we want to trim this seam allowance down. You want to start just below piece E and trim all the way around the outside of piece F, about 1/4 of an inch away from your stitching. I like to use pinking shears for this, especially when I'm not interfacing fabrics. So I just take my pinking shears and I just kind of go in and then come back out. I'm just going to trim all the way around the edges. Because I'm not interfacing, doing the pinking shears will just prevent it from fraying over time. This was a pretty thick cotton, so I didn't want to interface it and create more bulk than what was needed. And then I'm just going to go off the edge at the end. Okay, so go ahead and do that to your other 2 interior pouches, and then we'll come back. Okay, so you should have all 3 of your pouches trimmed down by 1/4 of an inch, except for this one part up here where the vinyl's at. You want to leave that uncut. You want to pull out your flap piece. As I mentioned before, if you are using a magnetic snap, you'll want to add that magnetic snap before you start sewing, because you won't be able to add it after you sew. So we're going to put our 2 flap pieces together, and you can glue them together. You can not glue them. You could just leave them the way they are. I have found that it lays much smoother if these are glued together before you start sewing them. So after you do that, and then you'll notice that I leave my other piece kind of big around the edge so that I can then trim it nice and precisely when I'm done sewing. So we're going to sew this edge here at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, starting at the top. Make sure you pivot where you've got different sides and corners. When you start getting into your curve, pivot just enough so you get a nice clean curve. Okay, so just like that. And now I'm going to trim all this down and make it look nice and pretty. Just trim all this extra off of my back piece. If you're going to edge coat your vinyl, you would want to do it after you trim everything down and before proceeding on to the next step, and make sure that it's all the way dry. Okay, so your flap should now be edge painted or edge coated, and you want to make sure that this is completely dry before we move on. So go ahead and set your flap off to the side. Pull out piece D, And you should have an interior and an exterior piece. And we're going to put these right sides together. And we're going to sew the top at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to turn it and top stitch it. Okay, so piece D should now be sewn right sides together and top stitched. And then I also base stitch my raw edge together just because it makes it easier when we go to put this with the other piece. So go ahead and set piece D off to the side for a moment. Grab your flap and piece B. Now it's going to matter which side is top and bottom. So make sure that you recognize your top from your bottom. Go ahead and add some double-sided sticky tape to piece B at the bottom if you wish. Pull that backing off. And then we want to place our flap wrong side of flap to right side of piece B. Okay, so your top side or your front side should be facing up. And then we're going to center those. Now I like to do this next step all in one shot. So I'm going to add my piece B to my flap, which is why I use double-sided sticky tape here, just to hold it in place. And I'm just using 1/8 inch double-sided sticky tape. So we have piece B and the flap. We're going to take piece C, and we're going to add it on top of the flap, right side of piece C to right side of flap. Clip those together, and we're going to sew this together at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to turn it with our seam allowance facing down and top stitch. Okay, so we should have piece C sewn to the flap and then sewn to piece B, 3/8 inch seam allowance. So now we're going to fold this piece C down. So we want our seam allowance, really our seam allowance is pointing downwards, but we want to fold this down. And then I like to take a little seam roller and just roll this seam out. Because we're using vinyl, we don't really want to use heat. And then we're going to top stitch along piece C at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once I get to a certain point, I just lift my flap up and out of the way. Try not to fold the flap though. Just kind of hold it out of the way while you're sewing. Okay, trim your threads. And now you should have something that looks just like this. So we have piece C, our flap, and piece B right here behind it. Go ahead and set this off to the side. Actually keep this for a moment and grab your piece D slip pocket, and we're going to add piece D to the bottom of this piece, this exterior back piece, aligning our bottom edges and our side edges together, and we're going to base this in place. Okay, so your back slip pocket should now be attached to your back exterior piece. If you're going to make your own piping, you'll want to pause the video here and do that on your own. I'm using some pre-made piping, so I won't be making piping in this video. But the instructions are very thorough on creating your own piping in the instructions, so follow along for that to create your own piping. You do want these to be about 23 inches, and I will be using a smaller piping, so I'll explain how I'm going to finish this off using a smaller piping. Okay, go ahead and pull out your exterior piece A, B, and C. and we want to pull out piece A, one piece B, and one piece C. So you should have 3. So piece A, piece B, and piece C. And you're going to add your piping to each of these 3 panels, and only these 3 panels. Don't add them to the other 2. You do want to use the piping marks that are on here to align your piping to, so you'll clip it here and then stop it at the second, this top line here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so you should now have your piping added to 3 of your exterior pieces. The next thing we want to do is we want to set piece A to the side, and we want to match up piece C with piping, okay, piece C with piping, to piece B with no piping. So if you remember at the very beginning, we marked our exterior pieces 1A, 2B, and 2C's. Okay, so these should all be marked with either A, B, or C on them. So we want to take one piece C with piping and match it with one piece B with no piping. And then we want to take one piece B with piping and match it to one piece C with no piping. Okay, we're going to put these right sides together and just line up your top edges. Definitely make sure your top edges are nice and aligned straight, and then maybe add a clip or 2 to the side. And we're going to sew starting here. So you should already have this marked from piece I as part of your prep work, but we're going to start right here in the corner, and we're going to sew all the way around and back up. And then I like to pivot and sew back down again. So I would have 2 lines of sewing rather than back stitching at the front in the beginning, because these pieces, especially in this area, they will get pulled on quite a bit when we go to bird this. So I start here, I sew all the way around, and I come up to the other side, and then I pivot my whole thing around, and I will sew back. All right. Okay, so then we're going to do that with both sets. So set piece C with no piping, piece B with piping, and then piece C with piping, and piece B with no piping. Okay, so as you can see, we've only sewn that U shape here. We did not sew our side pieces together. Okay, so just a U shape. So now you want to pull out exterior B panel without piping. So I can see here that this is my B panel, and this B panel has no piping on it. I'm going to set my other one to the side, and then I want to pull out piece A with the piping. Now, if you haven't installed your magnetic snap or your turn lock, you'll want to do that now, so that it makes it a little bit easier if you do it now before you attach everything. But what we're going to do is we're going to take piece C, and we're going to fold it out of the way. And so I just take and clip this out of the way, and then I take my bottom piece and I just fold it up, and same thing, just take and clip that out of the way. Just makes it a lot easier if it's not in the way while you're trying to sew this. And then we're going to attach piece A and piece B together, right sides together. Okay, so this is piece C here, and this is piece B, and this is piece A. We're going to put piece A right sides together with piece B, and piece C is out of the way, and we're going to sew this together. Now, you'll be doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'll be doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance because of the piping that I chose to use, but you're going to sew this at a 3/8. Now, if you're starting at a 3/8 and then you have to go down to a 1/4 inch, you're going to start at a 3/8 here at the top, okay? And then as you get into your piping, you're going to go to a 1/4 inch. Okay, so I have now sewn piece A with piping to piece B with no piping. And you can see where I followed that sew line for my piping all the way around. So I started at 3/8 of an inch at the top, and then I went into my 1/4 inch. So now we're going to trim all this down to a 1/4 inch of a seam allowance. We want to start below this first piping notch. So we want to start right about there, and we're going to trim down all the way around. And so because I have an original 1/8 of an inch sewing line, I'm just going to cut right along that basting stitch that I had from my piping. Okay, and then we're just going to sort of veer off right where that first piping line is at. Okay, so just like that. So you can see I still have quite a bit up here at the top on either side. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn this right side out. Pull any clips in there that you may have. And so I just take and I push my corner down in there first. Be very gentle. Don't pull on this too much. You don't want to pop any stitches where we sewed that U. Just kind of give it a good push. And then push your corners out real good. And check your piping, make sure you're happy with it. Okay, so just like that. So now you can see panel A is here, and it's already a pouch at this point, right? We just have this back part. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab panel B with piping and panel C without piping. Okay. And we're going to pull panel B with piping out of the way just like we did before and clip it in place. And fold up that bottom so we can clip it in place. Okay, and then with the one that is our finished pouch, we're going to do the same way to it. We're going to just take and fold it out of the way and clip it. Same way on this other side and clip it. And then same thing, we're going to take and fold this up and out of the way. And you may need to get some bigger clips to hold this in place. So once you have those two folded out of the way, so panel B with piping and your finished pouch, you're then going to take and flip these. So panel C with piping, right sides together with panel B with no piping. I'm sorry, panel C with no piping. So panel C with piping, panel C with no piping, right sides together, and we're going to sew this. Again, you're going to sew it at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to start at a 3/8 and then go into a 1/4 inch and then back into a 3/8 inch. Okay, so I now have my second pouch created. I went ahead and trimmed it down and turned it right side out. So you should have one pouch, two pouches, and then one that's still just plain. So the next thing that we're going to do, and this is where it gets a little thick and a little bulky, but just like we did before, we're going to fold everything inward. And I've got some bigger clips here that we're going to hold these in place. Just fold it all inward and clip it. And then we're going to fold this up just like we did with the other one. You can grab your clip and just hold it as best as you can. It is a little thick, so it can be a little difficult. If you have some bigger, longer clips, it might be a little bit better. And then go ahead and grab your back piece with your flap And we're going to put this right sides together with our B piece with piping. So right sides together, we're going to clip all this in place, and we're going to sew it just like we did before, trim it down, and turn it right side out. Okay, so now we have sewn our exterior back piece to our last piece, to our piece C with the piping. So that's now on there. Ooh, that's cute. Okay, so now our next step is to start adding our interior pieces to the bag. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. I have found it easiest to either add double-sided sticky tape along the edge of your interior piece or to glue these in. And I have found it easiest if we start with the back pocket first and then pull these other ones out of the way. Let me show you how I do that. So if I take my bag here, so this is my front part, I'm just going to take and fold these inward just like this and just clip them out of the way. Let me use a different clip here so I can fold those prongs down. Okay, and then if I take my second one and do the same thing and fold it out of the way and clip it. So just like that. So you'll have your front pocket here and this middle pocket folded down and out of the way. So just your back pocket is exposed. So then we're going to add our lining pieces to each one of these. Like I said, I found it easiest if you either add some tape or some glue to add these in. So we're going to add each one of these, and then we're going to top stitch around the exterior part. Okay, so we have now sewn that back part on. So now we're going to take, just like we did the other two, we're going to take and fold this inward so it's out of the way, and just take and clip it in place. We're going to unclip the center part, leave this front part flipped inward, unflip the center part, and we're going to add our lining to this and sew around it. Okay, so now we have our center sewn, and we still just have our front pocket to sew here. So just like before, we're going to flip this inward and clip it out of the way on both sides. We're going to unclip our front part, add our lining down in here, and top stitch it. Okay, so our bag is now done. We should have all three linings inside. So the only thing that's left to do is add our side connectors to your middle part. I'm not going to do that on video, but you would just add your side connectors to the middle part. If it's getting a little thick and maybe you're having a hard time putting those side connectors on, you would just really want to take a pair of non-serrated pliers and really smush that vinyl down real nice and flat so you can get those side connectors on. And then attach your strap. And that's it. Wow, that was a fantastic bag to make. I love the way that it comes together so quickly and so easy. It looks like a complicated bag, and even though the pattern lists it as being intermediate to advanced, it's really not. It comes together quick. You can choose to do the piping, or you can choose to leave the piping off. As I mentioned in my video, I chose to do pre-made piping, but you can make your own piping as well. I see so many different potentials for this front flap though. It's such a large flap that you can really do some great customization with it. Remember again, if you're adding a magnetic snap, you'll want to add that magnetic snap on before you sew your flap together so that you don't have your prongs showing on the outside. Otherwise, it's a fantastic bag, comes together so quick, and I love it so much. Now the only thing left for me to do is attach my strap and we're all done.